Welcome to the SaaS Growth for Good podcast. This is the podcast for SaaS entrepreneurs who are passionate about positive change in themselves, in their team, and in the wider world. Today, joining me is Mr. Jack Thompson. Jack is easily the best mentor on the Natwest Accelerator program. Some of you might know that I've been through that Accelerator program over the last 12 months and had the great fortune to meet Jack, learn a bit more about his backstory, and he's been invaluable helping Plexi and picking apart sales and marketing strategy and looking for a way forward. Jack, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm not sure I could live up to that introduction you've given me, but I'll do my best. So yeah, for the context of this conversation, I'm a business development consultant. Now, so marketing agencies predominantly, but some other kind of software and B2B tech companies as well for the last 15 years or so, and now work for myself. So I sort of effectively take that career experience I have doing business development for other companies, and now I use that experience to help a portfolio of clients, advising them on their business development strategy. Alongside my kind of paid work, if you like, I do a lot of kind of pro bono work, helping and mentoring and coaching predominantly early stage founders with their business development strategy and very early stage stuff. So it's just getting the kind of housekeeping stuff in place, giving some advice and guidance. And I do that kind of alongside my paid work, as it were, which is obviously how we met. So Natwest Accelerator is one of a few places where I offer my time, sort of paying it forward, I guess. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Sales, business development, marketing, that sort of stuff. If I'm an expert in anything, those are the things that I suppose I would hang my hat on to a certain degree.
Great. Well, you're definitely in the right place to discuss that. Is that where you meant to end up? Jack, age 5, dreaming of being a fireman, being an engineer, being a doctor. Was this what you had in mind?
I don't know why it is, but maybe it's a generational thing. But I think when I was a kid, everyone wanted to be a marine biologist for some reason. I don't know where that came from. Maybe there was things on TV at the time of people diving down into beautiful marine reefs and swimming with dolphins and that sort of stuff. But so for a long time, I wanted to be a marine biologist, whatever that is. Didn't go any further than childhood dreams, unfortunately. Although that would be a lovely lifestyle, I'm sure. To be honest, I'm one of these people that for a long, long time in my life, I didn't really have any career aspirations. I was mainly into rugby and music, to be frank, until quite late. It wasn't until after university and after a few jobs which had nothing to do with what I'm doing now that I kind of fell into a sales role effectively. Not exaggerating this any way, I was looking for a job in London to have an excuse to live in London and live with my now wife. And I've been working in horticulture for a few years, growing ornamental Japanese trees, completely not in the traditional business world, living in, working in a valley in Sussex with 2 other people and, hardly talking to anyone all day. But I had a habit, or I had a skill, I guess, that was being open and willing to talk to people and being friendly, etc. That was some sort of natural skill, I guess I had. Looking for a job in London, had a few mates who worked in media sales, and they said, "Oh, you could do this. You can talk to people. You've got confidence. You go and have a go at media sales." So, well, why not? Better than some of the other options I had. Managed to blag a job in a publishing company selling advertising in magazines, based in Notting Hill, and absolutely loved it. Fell into it. Absolutely loved it. Loved the whole process. Loved the people I worked with. Loved the environment, and luckily I was good at it for some reason, and so that kind of started me in that process of sales. And as you build any kind of career over the years, I've done various training and etc, but mainly learning on the job, really just fine tuning what I do. And I'm unashamedly a salesman. I love it. I get a buzz out of it. I still do now. I love the process. And so yeah, but it was never really a lifelong ambition. I literally fell into it and just have happened to fall into a career that I love. I guess the bit that's more recent than that is working specifically in marketing agencies. And I think that, again, fell into that, if I'm frank. I had other sales jobs, and then was told that if I wanted to work in marketing agency land, the only career that would be relevant given my skill set was business development. A euphemism, effectively, sales is a bit of a dirty word. So I became a business development manager based on my experience of doing B2B sales previously. And again, absolutely love it. I love working in marketing agencies, the creative people, the technologists, the developers, the strategists, etc., etc. I just love the environment. It's always bit of alchemy as far as I'm concerned. I wouldn't pretend to be a practitioner in anything regarding the kind of marketing side of things, apart from the business development that I do. But the amazing creative people I get to work with, and obviously made some really good friends through that career. I really, really enjoy it, and that's so I kind of, again, it was an accident to a certain degree, but I definitely built a career in it. The last 13 years have really been formative and very much focused on that kind of marketing agency world. So yeah, kind of happy with the accident of how it's occurred, but made a career of it now.
What do you think the things are? People that love selling. Lots of people are scared by it. The idea of picking up the phone, making a call to somebody that they don't know, really petrifies them. And I think for people like us, having done that for years, that can be quite hard to. It's like, okay, well, like, why would you do that? Like, it can be quite hard to empathize with that, having been through that for such a long time. What do you think it is about you and sales that matches up perfectly? Like, what is it that you enjoy so much about it?
Well, I think there's two sides of it. I definitely enjoy it. So that and like a lot of things in life, if you manage to find something that you enjoy, that you can make a career out of, that's obviously a great combination, right? So I definitely do enjoy the process. And when I talk about the process, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's also in business development and me, and we both still get a buzz out of the end-to-end process of identifying a prospect, to use that terminology. We find a business or a person that we would like to do business with. We somehow make contact with them, and obviously there's lots of ways that could happen, but somehow we get their attention and we have a conversation, a meeting or a phone call, whatever it might be. And then over a period of time, we take them from completely cold, never heard of us, never spoken to them before, never have no idea who each other is, and through whatever process your business works with, and you've got to take them from that point to a sale at some point in the future. And sometimes it could be years, it doesn't have to be a quick process, but that process of finding someone, starting a conversation, taking them, and selling to them, not in a, that's the problem with sales. You take a process need, we have a service or a product that solves a problem that they have, identifying whether it works or not, having a conversation about that, writing proposals, doing pitches, whatever it might be. And at some point in the future, you get their signature on a contract to say, yeah, I'd love to work with you. And I still get a huge buzz out of that process. I don't know if it's something I'm wired in a certain way, but that kind of hunter-gatherer instinct or whatever it is, I genuinely enjoy. So that's one side of it. The other side of it, and this takes me back to my first job interview in that media sales job that I just mentioned in London. I was kind of pre-screened by a recruitment consultancy, as you are. So I went for a meeting with a recruitment consultant. I'd never had a job in anything like this. So they were just, who's this guy from the countryside who thinks he can come and do sales? So I sat down with a recruitment consultant, had a kind of pre-interview. They said to me, what, classic rubbish job interview question, what's your biggest what's your biggest challenge, or what's your biggest negative or whatever? And I said, I don't like rejection. I fear rejection, I think is what I said to them. And she sort of laughed and a bit awkwardly. She was like, yeah, you can't say that in an interview for a sales job. And I was like, what do you mean? She says, well, that is you did every single day. So I know, again, this is flipping it as if, the beauty of hindsight, as if it was planned. I just kind of said, well, that's why I'd be good at sales, because I'll just do everything I can to avoid rejection, right? I'll just kind of talk people around so they say yes rather than no. And actually, that it seems really stupid. That's kind of where I feel I have some sort of talent. It's not about talking people into things they don't want to do, but because I have that kind of it's almost a bad thing if you looked at it saying fear of rejection with me. Well, you never pick up the phone, you never put yourself into an awkward situation because you just hide in a room and so no one can ever say no to you. But I'm very happy to put myself out into those situations and identify hopefully opportunities where I can turn a no into a yes, or a maybe into a yes, or because ultimately if it's a hard no, it's a no, right? But if if someone's like a bit interested, great, you've got a bit of a hook there, you can take them on that journey. So I think that kind of weirdly, that stupid response I gave to that question when I first got interviewed is kind of at the nub of why I really enjoy it and why I feel I'm good at it, because I try and find the yes where I might immediately get a no. So yeah, I don't know. They're the only things I can really refer to. I don't know. There's nothing else really, just innate interest and enjoyment of the process, and that kind of fear of failure drives me on to success, I guess, to a certain degree. But yeah, it's not an exact science.
Do you think you still feel that to the same degree, or having done it for decades now, that fear of rejection is less, and that it's still a driver in some sense, but it's not as crippling as it might have been at the beginning, and it's not something that genuinely keeps you up at night?
No, well, I think it's like a lot of things. It's practice. Practice makes perfect. Right? So yes, my first job was effectively cold calling. My first sales job is in Southwest London to sell them classified advertising in magazines. Now, what builder wants to get a sales call when they're halfway up a ladder on a job with tools in their hands, their mobile phone goes off, and there's me sat in an office in Notting Hill trying to sell them 2 inches of advertising space in the back of a magazine they've never heard of? I mean, you get every expletive you've ever heard of. You don't, you spend all day with people telling you where to go in very aggressive terms. And quite rightly so, to be honest, because you're interrupting their day, and they're at a day rate. They're trying to get their job done, and some idiot's trying to sell them advertising they A, don't want, and B, definitely don't need, because they're busy already. Why would they take the call in the first place? But their mobile phone goes, they're halfway up the ladder. You go, yep, all right, mate. And then you're trying to do a pitch to them. Very quickly, they tell you where to go. So when you do that day in, day out for months and months, you get a thick skin very, very quickly, right? So, and you realize that in that kind of sales, and this is not what I do these days. Certainly, this is not how I advocate doing sales in the kind of businesses I work for now. But when you're doing that kind of volume game, it's the word volume that's the trick, because you are cold calling all day. You're making God knows how many calls, and it's a numbers game. You realize very quickly it's a numbers game. If you make enough of those phone calls and you're relatively targeted on the people you call, we knew that independent traders in Southwest London of a certain size would be interested if their business was in a certain position or whatever. We just had to find them, and it was a bit of a needle in the haystack. But as long as you trusted the process and made enough calls and got your pitch over, you would, for however many no's and F-bombs and stuff you'd get thrown down the phone at you, you would eventually hit one. And he'd be like, "Oh yeah, great, yeah, that actually
coming down ladders at you."
Yeah, and that and you realise that it's for all those no's, you just take it on the chin. You put the phone down, have a bit of a laugh about it. We'd all be sat around the desk. Everyone's doing the silly stuff that people have said to them, and and that's kind of that sort of just banter, I guess, for want of a better expression, in the sales team. But at least once or twice a day, you would get through to that person that was interested, and then you do your thing and you get a sale. And if you do that, and you just learn that for all the no's you get, you will eventually get a yes, and that's where you build that thick skin. You kind of take the no's on the chin, you learn something from it. The objection you were given, you fight. Maybe you call them back a few days later and you try and overcome whatever objection. So that's where the thrill of the chase comes in. That's where that first thing I said about enjoying the process. There would occasionally be times where you phone them the first time and you get told in no uncertain terms where to go, and then you might try them again in a couple of weeks' time and with a slightly different angle on your call, and then it might be okay, well, look, just send me some more information. And then lo and behold, 3 months later, that guy that originally told you where to go has signed a deal and wants to take some ads in the magazine for a few months. And that it really, from a salesman point of view, it doesn't get much more satisfying than that. And so yeah, that again, that kind of the thrill of the chase and that fun was what motivated me. But ultimately, you do lose an element of that fear of failure, if you like, just by going through that process, because you get very used to the fact that it is a numbers game. It's why the marketing funnel is a V shape, right? Lots of stuff goes in the top, very little comes out the bottom. That's the reality of sales and marketing, etc. So you realize it's whatever game you're in, it is a numbers game. There's going to be more no's than yeses. Your job is to find the yeses and get past the no's in very simple terms. So yeah, you just learn that that's the case after a while.
How valuable do you think that is for a junior salesperson to to be chucked in at the deep end in a cold calling role with no real, I mean, there's a degree of structure to those sorts of roles. You have set targets, call targets, lead targets, deal targets over the months that you need to be closing. But it's fairly loose and ready, and you are very much chucked in at the deep end with those sorts of roles. How valuable do you think that is for somebody cutting their teeth in sales?
Well, I mean, I can only talk from personal experience, really, and it was formative as far as I'm concerned. I went from the closest thing. I mean, it's funny when you kind of look back at your career. I guess I could reverse engineer that I'd been doing sales since I was 16, 17. My first job was in a restaurant. Pizza Express as a waiter. So you could argue my job there was to kind of upsell and increase the bill by getting them to buy more drinks and more side orders and more desserts, because there was a correlation between how much their bill was and how much tip I would get. You generally get, most people pay 10, 15%. So if you got them to pay more on their meal, I knew I'd get more tips. So I was kind of upselling. Oh, are you sure? Another glass of wine, another beer? Oh, do you want a really nice dessert? You kind of got the patter to try and get them to spend more money. I didn't consider it to be a sales job at the time, but it kind of was. So I guess I'd had that kind of grounding. Fast forward until I was working in
structured their commission structure like that, did they?
At the time, yeah. I mean, this is the dark days when there was no such thing as tax complications for waiters. So the team of waiters, we literally had a glass jar each with our name on it under the till. Any cash tips would go straight into our jar. You could keep it at the end of the night completely. The tax man never saw any of that money. Pure cash in the back pocket. On top of my minimum wage, which I think was £3.25 an hour or something. And then the cash was our cash bonus. I mean, at one point when I was working there, this wasn't just me. This was pretty average for everyone who worked there. We were all on that minimum wage. I was taking home about six in tips, living with my mum and dad. This is in 1996, 97. That was 600 quid cash in my back pocket without any tax. So I was living the high life. It was amazing at that age. But there was that I got whatever tip I could get out of someone was mine to keep. Pizza Express got the profit on the food on the drink, which is very good as well. Anyway, but yeah, so that was kind of a sales job, I guess, to a certain degree. When I was working in horticulture, we used to do flower shows, and I'd stand on the stand. We could, Hampton Court and Chelsea and all these sorts of places, selling trees that we'd grown in the nursery. And it was basically my boss was a complete introvert. He'd stand at the back of the stand, didn't want to talk to anybody. Half the reason why he ran a nursery in a valley in Sussex with only three of us, he spent, didn't want to talk to anyone basically. He had to do flower shows because that's how we made money. So I came along, and he was great. He'd stand at the back of the show, kind of watering and caring for the plants. I'd be out the front chatting to whoever it was that came along, mostly women of a certain age. And, that's not gender stereotyping. That's just the reality of the kind of people who go to flower shows. And I was just, it was my job to kind of chat to them about their gardens and what soil type they had. And is it north facing? Is it south facing? Is it blah, blah, blah? Oh, this is the tree for you. Oh, yeah, So again, I was selling. No training, but I'd be just passing cash back to my boss at the back. He'd be stood at the back, and I'd just be periodically passing in bundles of cash for all the trees that were being sold. And he loved it. Obviously, this was record sales for his because his sales technique was stand at the back and not talk to anyone. So you can imagine how well he did before I turned up. But anyway, so all of that was kind of training, I guess. But by the time I went into proper media sales, back to your original question, yeah, I mean, if you want to have a job where sales, business development, and this is something he does it as a job, whose title and expectation is to generate leads and sales for a business, having that grounding in having to completely generate from cold conversations with prospective businesses and take them on that journey from first contact through to actual sale and being able to own that whole process, I think is really, really important because you learn so much about every aspect of it. And obviously, yes, when you grow in your career in sales, you guarantee you'll only be doing an element of that, training people on the early bit, or delivering the closing bit at the end, or more involved in architecting the process itself, or managing teams, or whatever it is. But as with everything in life, if you don't kind of understand how to do those bits, or haven't had some experience of doing all those bits, there's only so much you can then, train or advise other people to do. So yeah, I consider it to be a really important part of my career. Sat in an office in Notting Hill, cold calling independent builders for 12 months or whatever it was. So yeah, it was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was genuinely good fun, good office, good laugh. A bunch of young people, similar ages, similar life stage, just having fun and making good money as well. So it was good. It was good times.
The point you make about your boss growing trees in Sussex, clearly a massive introvert and not someone who would naturally go and speak to strangers and go put themselves out on a limb to build relationships with others. And as you're describing that, I'm thinking about very technically minded founders, leaders of businesses who are very technically minded and probably lean more towards that introverted side and are less used to just going out and building relationships with strangers, which is, as a salesperson, what you basically do. Do you think there's a way, have you seen introverts who are massively successful at selling, and if so, how do they do it? Or how would an introvert navigate selling themselves or building sales teams to sell for them, do you think?
So the answer to if I've seen introverts be good at selling, 100% yes. I think again, focusing on the experience I have with the clients I have and the types of businesses I work with now and I have done in the past, my job, if you like now, or the role of business development predominantly in agencies and a lot of other sort of B2B service providers or high ticket item clients where there's going to be some sort of consultative sell, is about getting experts in the room with the client. And ultimately your salespeople, it's very unlikely they'll be a real domain expert in what you do as well. It's hard to get both. I mean, I've worked in digital marketing and branding and various elements of marketing and software, etc., for long enough to have a kind of dangerous level of understanding of it from a strategic point of view. Certainly the initial consultation process in the sense of understanding, asking the right questions, qualifying opportunities. Is this a good fit? That very, very top level conversation. And I can have that at, at a good senior level with clients. But if someone asked me to, write a digital marketing plan or, plan an SEO campaign or, do a brand workshop or something, that's not me. I know my job is to identify there's a need and qualify the opportunity. But ultimately, my job is also to put the expert in the room with the client, because the expert does the selling. It's not, in the world that I operate now, it's not about, the point of view when I was selling advertising. This is about a consultative sell between two senior business people talking about a nuggety business challenge. So if the client is in a room with an expert and they can see the person on the other, or the people on the other side of the desk clearly have the expertise they need and are already kind of helping to solve problems and provide value in those conversations, that's the sell ultimately. That is the sales process. And so those experts, they can definitely be introverted, because what you generally find, even if people consider themselves to be introverted, if they're talking about the thing they're an expert in, if they're in the room with a person talking about SEO, paid search, software development, branding, whatever it might be, they might otherwise be a bit of a wallflower or not be, socially confident, or, put them in a networking environment, they might, not be particularly comfortable. But if you put them in a room with a couple of clients and maybe a couple of their colleagues workshopping or talking about their domain expertise, they nail it, absolutely nail it. And that's the sales process. So for me, if I was, working with someone I might consider to be an introverted client, or identify that might be the personality type of the client I was working with, my advice would be maybe for them not to be doing that initial sales bit, because those cold calls and those initial kind of getting to know you calls and kind of networking and that sort of stuff maybe could be a bit awkward for them, because it's not really, that's not where their personality sits. So I'd advise they probably do engage with someone to do that work for them. There's various ways you can do that, but a lead gen person or business or whatever, to get them in the room ultimately with the clients once they've identified there's a need, and then the conversations they're having are not cold, speculative conversations. They're qualified conversations about a tangible opportunity, and it's their chance then to shine and showcase their expertise. And I generally find that if they're talking about something they're confident talking about, even a really severe introverted person can still really shine in that environment. Person alongside them, an account management person or a salesperson to kind of, nurture the client and have the kind of conversations around it, the introduction and the outro and that sort of stuff, just to kind of frame the conversation. But I still find the best person to sell in that environment is the expert. And if that person's an introvert, that's not necessarily a challenge, I don't find. It just, again, it's if you have your sales process, you understand how that works, what bit of that process would it make sense to bring those people into? And it may be they're really good at that bit, but they're not very good at the account management afterwards. Or again, we've already said they might not be good about the sales bit initially, but they'll guarantee there'll be a point. Or it could be in the background and they're not client facing at all. But what they do is sit in the background and write amazing content or, write the proposals. They're the brain behind the business, and they don't actually do any public facing stuff. They just sit behind, various ways, but it doesn't mean that they can't add huge value to the business and be part of the sales process, but just in a different way than owning the whole thing and doing it from end to end. It's not. I don't think that shouldn't be a blocker. It's just knowing your strengths and your weaknesses and applying yourself in the right way, I guess, in very simple terms.
And where you've built sales teams in the past, or where you help clients to build sales teams now, do you put much active effort into looking at the personality types in that team and putting people in the right positions, and do you have a way that you go about structuring that, or do you just kind of play it by ear and figure out, get to know people, figure out what they're best at, what they're not so good at or comfortable with, and then just fit it around that?
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in recruitment, although I do live with an ex-recruitment consultant. My wife was in recruitment for 10 years, so I guess I learned something like osmosis, I guess. I think the thing that I have learned from doing my own recruitment, and certainly looking on behalf of my clients sometimes, but having done it in-house as well, if you're very, very clear, again, it kind of is worth saying now that a lot of stuff that now to do with good business development is relatively boring, I guess, from outside looking in. It is admin, it's process, it's it's doing things repetitively over and over again. So if you've got a good process and you understand, you've done that kind of an analysis of your business to understand what does your sales process actually look like. Is it heavily reliant on lots of cold calling, for example? The publisher I work for, they'd done it for years. They knew that it was a volume game. If you want to get hold of builders in southwest London, you go around getting business cards out of corner shops, or you go through the yellow pages, you just cold call until you get a yes. And the various other things we used to do, but that was the volume game. Working in other agencies and businesses, they get leads from different ways, and it could be that actually strategic partnerships are a far more effective way of generating leads, and you get your leads in that way. Now, straight away, you've got two very different sales people. If your leads come from lots of outbound cold stuff, that you need a certain personality type, certain type of salesperson who's happy to do it initially, but also good, has maybe some experience doing it, or can show the aptitude and the attitude to be able to get on and do that. And it's very a short-term results-based work, right? Whereas a business that relies more on strategic partnerships, that's probably not it's definitely not the same skill set. So it wouldn't be the same person unless it's a small business and they're spinning lots of plates. A business that relies heavily on strategic partnerships would have someone with the skill set that fitted that. So it's not a volume game. It's about nurturing relationships. It's about identifying other businesses that you could collaborate with and starting conversations. But it's not volume. It's high value, low volume, and it's a very different type of sale. So if you've done that analysis of your business, or even have an idea of those pros you're going to get leads from, that would be the thing. You need to do that internally before you start then thinking about who you might recruit, because you could find someone who's really good at sales, has an amazing background in doing cold lead gen and generating millions of pounds worth of business by running automated outbound emails and LinkedIn stuff and write all that, great. And then you bring them into a job where their main job is generating leads from strategic partnerships, that's not the right person. It's sales, but it's not the same person. So, and that's quite obvious when you think about it, but I've seen those mistakes be made. So yeah, the answer is you write the job description, very, very clear on the process you have internally, what part of that process you expect this person to fulfill. And it's not rocket science within sales. You look at someone who's got relevant experience, who's done a bit of it before, and in sales it's a bit of a personality thing. So you will hopefully, if you have some understanding of how it should work and have done a bit of it yourself, kind of what you're looking for. Ultimately, the proof is in the pudding to a certain degree. So you can meet someone, they've got experience, chat, have a good conversation, get a good vibe from them. But sales is very results based, right? So you put them into a role, you'll know relatively quickly whether they're a good fit for it, which is why you have 3-month probation periods, if not longer. You have KPIs and targets attached to those things. But sales is it's a very accountable thing. You sink or swim to a certain degree based on your results. So if that person's not working out, they're not doing it, you'll know very quickly. Unlike, I suppose, some other roles where it might take longer for that to come out in the wash. But so yeah, that's probably other things we could consider, but they're the things that come to mind, I guess.
So what's the sort of process you go through for nailing that sales and marketing mix for a company that's launching a new product, or they're a new company, and they're still testing those channels, figuring that out, and just starting to get those flywheels turning before they think about scaling things up? What does the process look like for figuring that out?
Well, I'm going to stick to the world that I know, which is B2B sales. So I'm going to make an assumption that this is mainly going to be relevant for people who have got a relatively high value product with a low volume sale. So this is where there's some sort of consultative element to the sale, if you like. The scenarios we've already spoken about, getting an expert in a room with someone, those sorts of scenarios. So what I'm not talking about is where there might be a digital transaction or e-commerce or kind of something which can be done purely digital, because that's not my area of expertise. So as an assumption here, it's more on the kind of the consultative sales side of things. I guess there's, in my experience, most businesses within B2B get their leads from 4 different sources, and this is backed up by statistics from various people. But this is definitely experience I've had over my career. So I would think about an early stage company, regardless of whether you even have a product in market or not, to think about these 4 areas, if you like, and then start building a plan around those 4 areas, which you may be able to kind of build upon experience if you've been in market for a while and expand upon these things, or it could be that you just set your stall out to try exploring these 4 areas. But for me, having it split out in that way gives you, it sort of chunks it up, and then you can start building a plan again around those 4 areas. So the 4 areas, very briefly, would be first and foremost client referrals. So, if you haven't got clients, obviously that's tricky, but you can start thinking about the fact that if you have any inroads into clients, if you have any early conversations, and as soon as you do start having conversations with clients, over time in the B2B environment, you should expect existing clients to be a very strong source of new business and new leads. And it's obvious, it's introductions, it's referrals, like you would in your personal life. If someone asks you for an introduction or refer those businesses or individuals which you would trust and feel would be good at the job, whether that's a plumber to help a mate out, or whether it's a garage to take your car to, or whatever it might be, it's the same within any B2B environment. So having clients that you trust and and respect you for what you do, if they get asked or if they become aware of other opportunities within their professional network, you'd hope that you would be introduced and referred in that scenario. So it's about, ultimately, that's about client satisfaction. It's about making sure your current clients or your new clients, when you win them, you're over delivering. They're really happy with you. Because you will only get those referrals in that scenario. But you can also lean against that in time. Ultimately ask for those introductions and make sure your existing clients know the kind of clients you want to get. And if they've got people in their network, they'll make those introductions. So really important. That's a focus, and that will be in time. You could easily see that be a third or more of your revenue would come from introductions from existing clients. So it's very, very important as a channel, if you like. And again, this sort of doesn't feel like sales. So a lot of people would say, well, that's not sales. Well, if it's new business into your business, it's definitely sales. You're still being introduced to a third party that you never worked with before. You've still got to get that opportunity and turn it into a new client. They don't come through the door with their checkbook ready to sign, but they do generally convert at a much higher rate because the level of trust is that much higher. someone they know has recommended you to do a job they've asked for, you'd hope that they will convert at a higher rate, but you still have to sell to them. So it's still new business, it's still sales, it's still a channel you should consider as part of your sales mix. The second, we've already talked on a little bit, is partnerships, strategic partnerships. Every business will rub shoulders with another business of some description in the delivery of what they do, whether it's software platforms, whether it's other professional service providers, whether it's just other people in your industry that you know and you trust. Most businesses will end up sharing work between other businesses in some way. So so that happens organically, and for a lot of businesses, that's just how they grow. People tell them about work, or people they know say, "Oh yeah, I know Plexi. Yeah, they're really good. Digital marketing with SaaS. Yeah, let's introduce them." And it just happens automatically. But actually, in time, you should be considering this more strategically. So potentially looking at a bit of a mind map is one I've used a lot. Think about your client and then all the different businesses and services that they'd also be talking to. Can you almost build a bit of a network of other businesses yourself within those to say, okay, they might, legal might be an area that they really lean on, but I don't have any contacts within legal in this space. If I'm trying to work with SaaS companies, are there some lawyers who also specialize in working with SaaS companies? If so, maybe I should have some conversations with them. It's got nothing to do with what I do as a service, but I may be able to refer my clients to them if they have a legal question, and it'd be great if I knew a lawyer I could refer them to, because it helps me add value to my client relationship. But also in time, that might be reciprocal. If they find out about an opportunity that matches what you do, you'd hope that they introduce you as well. So over time as a business, I'd really think about your strategic partnerships and what other businesses you can align yourself with. And again, this can be up to a third of your revenue over time. So it's a significant channel over time for most B2B companies. So well worth the effort and consideration to make it work as best as it can. That can include referral fees or different, guest posting on each other's sites, as simple as liking and commenting on each other's social media posts, whatever it might be. You nurture those relationships as much as you would any other within business. You can't just sit there and wait for the phone to ring, sort of thing. The third one is events and networking, which is challenging at the moment, I know, but actually I've been laying loads of it over the last couple of weeks. Conferences, going digital, meetups are going digital. There's virtual events almost. Well, I could be on one all day, every day, pretty much, if I really wanted to. So, still a great opportunity to get your name out there, align yourself with the market that you want to be in, meet new people, both prospective client, but talked about, and indeed just other interesting people in your market. The more they're out there, raising your brand awareness, being involved, events, both external events and potentially your own events in time, really, really important channel. And again, can be up to a third of your revenue, new business revenue. So you've got 90%, if not more, of your new business from those three channels potentially as a B2B company. Really, really important. But we've already talked about 90% of new business. We haven't yet talked about probably what people consider the more traditional element of sales, outbound sales, etc. Yes, it's really important, and for some companies, it's the be all and end all. But actually, your kind of marketing, outbound lead gen, newsletters, social media, your website, etc. In my experience, in consultative B2B selling, is often it's really, really important, but it's not as important as those other elements. But this is the mix that you need to find, because I'm saying it could be this, it could be that. Every business is different. You may find that your business really over indexes on a certain type of activity, a certain type of marketing. It could be strategic partnerships, it could be events, it could be whatever. So, but I would think consider those four channels, if you like, those four sources of leads, and over time monitor where your leads and your business is coming from, and then you'll find the mix that's right for you. And then it's about apportioning your time and your effort to those different channels. I've found that structure is really useful, because it's just about focusing your mind and making a plan around those four things. Obviously, there's lots of detail underneath that, but for the purpose of answering your question, that's probably enough.
Yeah, there is a lot of detail in each of those that we could probably spend 3 hours talking about each of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I constantly find that interesting that people do hone in on direct sales, digital marketing as the be all and end all. And for some companies, like you say, it is. There are companies that can see ridiculous exponential growth just off one of those channels. But in a lot of cases, that's not necessarily true. And not just for sales, but particularly in the SaaS space in terms of revenue. the amount of revenue increase that comes from acquisition can actually be quite low compared to the amount that comes from increasing your average revenue per user, or just reducing churn. But still, people have this fixation on acquisition through field sales or digital marketing. Why is that?
Yeah, well, it's what people think of when they think of sales, I guess. And I unfortunately still have a lot of clients where effectively the conversation starts with, I need more leads. And yes, ultimately that is what it all boils down to, but you can't just turn on a tap. There isn't like a magic wand you can wave that just starts pouring leads into a business. So thinking about all the potential ways you can generate leads for your business strategically, and making a plan around it means that, yes, part of that plan may well be doing lots of outbound digital marketing, direct acquisition stuff to cold prospects. But how much more effective would that outbound be if it's complemented with an awareness in the market through networking and through events, an alignment with other businesses in the industry? So your kind of credibility is that much more because you're seen in the market to be aligned with other leaders in your field. And obviously, if your clients can also make an introduction to you for you, even better. So these four channels aren't kind of mutually exclusive, and they're all kind of completely independent. They complement each other massively. If you're doing, let's say talk about SEO. A big part of SEO these days is kind of digital PR, or about effectively getting your content out onto the web somewhere, not just putting it on your own website and expecting someone to find it. Now, if you've got a strategic partnership with a large organization in your industry that has a high domain authority and a high profile in your market, and you could write a really interesting piece of content that they're willing to put on their website, your content is going to get far more eyeballs and be far more valuable from an SEO point of view on your partner website's blog, by them sharing it, talking about it, the traffic they get, etc. If it's deep linking back into some relevant landing pages on your website, that's far more effective than sticking it on your own website, tweeting about it and sticking on LinkedIn and putting it in your newsletter and hoping that it converts as a piece of content, right? So they're not. It's leveraging your network and your partnerships to make your own digital marketing that much more effective is certainly part of that. So just doing digital marketing as a standalone thing will not be as effective if you haven't got those other pillars in place, because you're that it's about trust. B2B is about trust, and all these other things are indicators to your potential clients about your credibility in the market, your ability to do the job. Are you a startup? Are you a scale up? Are you an enterprise SaaS company? That a lot of that comes from, yes, you can pour over the numbers of how much revenue you're making, how many clients you have, etc. But if you're company that you keep, the logos you have on your website, the stuff that you're interacting with on social media is of an ilk which is of that much higher value up the food chain, then you're punching above your weight, and people will perceive you as maybe potentially more than you are. But that's marketing, right? You're trying to grow something from scratch. You've got to play that game. So yes, digital marketing is really important, but actually it's far more effective by including those other things as well. But yeah, people focus in on it because they think that's the cold face, and that is to a certain degree. It's it's the marketing, the marketing funnel. You need to get leads in the top, and leads are not just the direct acquisition stuff. That's the point I make as much as I can, as often as I can, because in my experience that it works out like that. You can't just focus on one thing. You need to think about all of them, and they all complement each other in some way. In some way, sometimes in ways that you can't measure, but you need to be thinking about them all and having a mix which allows time and has the right effort against each of those channels ultimately.
Do you see a difference by the size of the business as well? Do you see smaller businesses with teams of founders and like early stage startups? They work best with a different mix to bigger multinational corporations with 40,000 employees across the world. Do you see that there's a difference in how that sales and marketing mix works for different size companies?
I guess. I mean, I don't want to go too far out my comfort zone, so I guess I'm gonna talk about businesses up to a certain scale. I mean, certainly in recent experience of working with on behalf of my clients with some relatively large SaaS companies, it just becomes more siloed ultimately. Unfortunately, the bigger the business, you have departments, and those departments may or may not work particularly well with each other. Some businesses are set up better than others, right? But in a kind of sales and marketing led business where it's a core to the business, hopefully you'll find that those two departments, if you like, are aligned. I was listening to a podcast or an interview with Rory Sutherland the other day. He's a relatively famous marketing kind of expert guy, and behavioral economics is kind of his thing, and he talks within marketing. And he made an interesting point saying that marketing-led businesses traditionally, and it's still to the case to a certain degree, are businesses that have brand as really important to the business. And he references FMCG companies being that. So Procter and Gamble, Unilever, these sorts of brands at the bigger level through to obviously smaller independents will invest hugely in brand and believe in the power of marketing, because that's ultimately the way that you get eyeballs and you get awareness. And then when someone walks into a supermarket, they recognise your tin of beans or your pack of crisps or whatever it is, and they buy you because they've seen your marketing. It's very hard just to get that awareness on the shelf, so they invest in marketing. And he made the point, as a result, those organisations often see marketeers at board level, often even running the company. Certainly the company believes in and invests in marketing and realizes the importance of it as part of the organization. Whereas he compared that to other businesses, he talked about technology companies. I don't remember him mentioning any specific ones, but he said companies where they've kind of built something and they've got like a product, technical product, and the people who own the company, run the company, are the technical people, the engineers who built that thing. And they think, well, it's amazing. It's an amazing technical thing. We spent months and years of R&D making it, so people surely will like it. And they try and sell it on the features that it has, etc. The classic kind of like challenge with selling high tech products. Whereas actually and so as a result, they don't believe in marketing. They see that as a sort of fluffy, sales and marketing, a sort of fluffy thing that happens over there. Whereas ultimately, it's still really important to those businesses, right? Like their customers won't understand their amazing technical widget unless they turn it into something a bit more understandable. They still need to have a brand. Like, what do they stand for? What's their vision, mission, and values? There's lots of jargon around that space, but ultimately they still need to invest in brand and marketing. So it's interesting that the bigger the company, the more you see that those challenges coming, because there are some big companies that actually they still manage to survive, maybe through the power of VC funding rather than the sort of profitability of the business. The companies that do believe in the power of sales and marketing are generally the ones that survive a long time. And you see this time and again. It's quite timely now, given the stuff that's going on, the amount of content that's been put out, regurgitated from previous recessions, about the importance of brand, the importance of marketing, the importance of continuing to keep your profile in the market, because those that don't, unfortunately, will come out the other side and suffer hugely as a result. So it's small companies. You have to. It's scrappy. You need to get leads. You need to get business in. Unfortunately, the bigger you get, especially in the tech space, if you do that kind of VC route and you're relying on cash coming into the business from rounds of investment, you can kind of overinflate the business and not realize the importance of your sales and marketing, and that potentially that comes undone, especially in times like this when suddenly those things are in far sharper focus. So I'm not sure whether I really answered your question there, but yeah. I think I did at some point.
Yeah, you definitely did. In times like this, it is definitely the case that a lot of SaaS businesses and tech companies are leaning more heavily on sales and marketing and are coming unstuck without having those processes and those flywheels spinning already. And it is a scary wake-up call for a lot of tech companies that rely on funding. But even in normal times, a stat that really shocks me is that 75% of businesses that go through Series A funding fail. 75% who go through Series B funding fail. 75% who go through Series C funding fail. And so times like this highlight the importance of it, but actually, even in normal times as well, the importance of getting it right and having that profitable sales machine is massive.
Yeah, I mean, the having worked on the investment side of things to a degree, and now I follow a lot of kind of angel investor type content, podcasts, etc. in that space. If you think about it from the investor point of view, if it's a numbers game. It goes back to that sales thing, right? So if you've got a portfolio of investments, I think it varies across sectors. So I'm not going to give like specific numbers, but it ranges between like one in 25 to 1 in 100 of being considered a relatively good hit rate as far as returns are concerned. So if you have a portfolio of 25 investments, you're effectively saying you only expect one of those businesses to actually return your investment and go pop, to turn into a unicorn or whatever it is. That's a relatively early kind of angel stage investment. So, those statistics will be different for Series A, Series B, etc. But you think about those numbers, they're effectively saying 24 out of the 25 companies they invest in, at the best case scenario, are going to go under. So, or they're not going to return their investment. So they might carry on as a kind of lifestyle business, but not turn into a significant enough business to return their investment. So ultimately, that they're the statistics that you're operating in if you're an early stage company. If you go down that route of funding, whereas if you bootstrap and build your business in a different way, then you make your own odds, right? You have far more control over that to a certain degree. But yeah, I mean, sales marketing is, if you believe in it now, if you believe in it before what's happening now. And this is going to, expose some companies, I guess. But ultimately, if you believe in the importance and the power of sales and marketing, which for some others, but if there's something that you intrinsically believed in and invested in and thought was important to your business before the current circumstance, the current situation, you've got to believe that it was still really important, right? Because it's not suddenly gone away. It's not suddenly not a thing to worry about anymore. So if you thought marketing, or you knew sales and marketing were important for your organization before the coronavirus happened, appreciate budgets will be smaller and your team may be smaller, and you're not going to be doing all the stuff you might have done before in its entirety. But you can't stick your head in the sand and wait for it to go away. You have to continue doing something to keep your presence in the market, to keep conversations going with people, to keep generating some element of new leads into the business. Conversion rates and times, lags, etc., are going to be completely different. Of course, your metrics will be going completely out the window, but this is not the time to stop doing that stuff. And ultimately, you're kind of contradicting yourself if you do, because if you invested it before, why would you just stop all of a sudden? Because we will, this world will carry on in some way, shape, or form. The world, the global economy isn't going to close down. It will be massively different, and it may take a long time to come back to some semblance of normality. But come back, it will at some stage. And you kind of have to make the decision: is your business going to be trading on the other side? And if so, you need to carry on doing something, because you guarantee your competitors will be. If you're not, at least one of them will be, and come out the other side. They're the ones that have the market share. They're the ones that people will be talking to come out the other side, because they'll be the ones that were continuing to build a presence and have conversations. It's obviously it's really, really hard for individual companies wrestling with the ways it's affected them. So it's very, very top level advice, I appreciate, but it's it has been proven time and time again in previous recessions that continuing to market through in some way is really, really important. And hopefully that message is getting through, because I do see it a lot. But is it speaking to the converting? I see it mostly in marketing and blogs, and being peddled by marketeers who obviously have a vested interest in it as well. So whether that message is getting through to the people who probably need to hear it the most, i.e. the people who aren't doing marketing and are sticking their head in the sand, are those people hearing that message as loudly and as clearly as they should? I guess that's an open question, because I live in the bubble I live in, so I see this all the stuff all the time. I've seen it previously, and so I'm a big believer in it. But hopefully it's getting through. The message is getting through to people who probably need to hear it more than I do.
Yeah. Now more than ever, it's essential that you invest in marketing.
No, don't get me wrong. Like I'm as what's the word? Skeptical about that as the next man, because I recognise exactly what it looks like. And of course, it sounds like agencies and marketeers try to justify their existence and claw back the budget that they might have lost. But I said the statistics do prove it out. It's not just people's opinion. There are plenty of statistics that prove the power of marketing, prove the power of doing this stuff. You just have to look at the stats. So yes, they're peddled by people who have a vested interest in that status quo. But you you can't argue with the facts, right? So it's yes, I share your skepticism, your wry smile and laugh, but it is, the stats are there to prove it. So it's not just someone's opinion who's sort of saying, please give my agency money because I need money. It's if you don't do this, you may not have a business out the other side of it, which is the stark reality. So it's it's a truism.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I was just playing devil's advocate there, and it is such a cliche, but it really is the case that had this happened 5-10 years ago, the opportunity to get those eyeballs on through social platforms, through digital, would not have been there. It would have been a very different situation. The ability to really step on the gas with marketing had the world shut down 15 years ago, without major social platforms, without all of the amount of time that people are spending consuming media on their phone and on their computers. It would have been a very different story for the world, and the world of work, but also for marketing. Completely agree. The first thing that we did when the recession, the recession hasn't really bitten in yet, but as soon as the lockdown went in place, was step on the gas of producing more content, increasing our output of content. That was the knee-jerk reaction, which I think a lot of people, even now, are still very much rabbit in the headlights syndrome. Have you got any tips for people that have lost funding, have kind of put recruitment and scale on pause? And I mean, for everybody, the goal right now is to survive, basically. But for people that still have that rabbit in headlights syndrome and need to see a way through this, have you got any tips for how they can go about marketing, selling in what are fairly sensitive times?
I mean, it's very hard to give blanket advice at points like this, because I appreciate that, had the conversation over the last 3 weeks. I've, having back-to-back calls with business owners and sales and BD people, and and obviously talking to and knowing people in my personal as well as my professional life, and how varied it's impacted people's lives. So it's very hard to give kind of blanket advice, because ultimately there's such a plethora of different scenarios that it is very much a case-by-case basis to a certain degree. But there are some kind of themes, I guess, emerging, which seem to be relatively common. Taking an assumption that by this stage, hopefully you've done some sort of financial forecasting, financial planning to look at, how your business stands in the short to medium to long term, scenario planning, how long the impact may last for, and, working out, how that's going to impact your business. If you've got zero revenue now, ultimately, how long can you survive on zero revenue before you have to think about, really serious consequences for the business? And you have to ultimately rip that band-aid and have those conversations. And I'd hope that most people have done that already. If not, that would be, priority number one, get that cash flow modeling done. Where do we stand now, and where do we stand if this continues for 6 months, 9 months, whatever it might be, because you just don't know. It could be a long, long time. So doing that basic financial planning stuff is 100% really important. I think accountants are really earning their stripes at the moment, kind of doing that stuff. If you don't have an accountant, then just build a basic spreadsheet, or just write down the numbers on a piece of paper and work it out. Just how long can I survive based on what I've got in the bank now, and what I can see coming in the next couple of months. So that's number one. Number two, about how you might approach sales and marketing. I think that, again, I'm kind of stealing this phrase from another lady, Katie Street, who also runs a BD consultancy. She used, and again, she might have stolen it from someone else, but I heard it from her first. The phrase helping is the new selling, which I think is a nice kind of how I've set some of my clients and even myself have some success over the last few weeks generating new conversations. Is that, and this, I found myself giving actually advice I would give even in normal times, but just really, really laser focused given the current climate, if you can find a way of adding, the word value is used quite a lot in sales, if you can help provide interesting insight, content, just a friendly voice to your existing clients as well as your prospects, helping them in some way, that's probably the message I'll be leading with at the moment. This is not the time to be leading with aggressive sales messages. You shouldn't be doing that anyway, but ultimately a lot of people do, and it does work for some people, don't get me wrong. But having a really aggressive kind of sales and marketing led approach at the moment, trying to being overtly kind of commercial about selling to people, that's just going to fall on deaf ears at the moment. So really being mindful of the tone of what you put out, and ultimately trying to lead with that helpful kind of tone, I guess. But it needs to be genuine. I mean, it's funny, someone showed me, there was a show reel I saw the other day. Someone had spliced together all of the Corona ads that have been put out in this, I think it was mainly in the States, and there was, I got the impression there was probably about 10 to 15 ads that had been sort of spliced together, and they're all exactly the same. The same kind of plinky plonky piano music, almost the same copy. They all have the same kind of stock images of people in their homes, kids doing activities, empty streets, and the same. We're here to help. We're here to help. We're here to help. We're here to help. It was fun. So I hear myself saying this and realise that I'm just doing exactly the same as what these ads are saying. And they're big global brands. We're talking about small businesses. And this kind of show reel just was taking the mick out of them, basically saying they're all saying exactly the same. That is, and you're seeing it in social society generally, supporting the NHS, charitable things, supporting your local community, getting shopping for an old person who lives down your street, whatever it might be. That's businesses like that now as well. Collaborating with people, being part of the community. I'm sure you must see it in the Natwest Accelerator, hopefully more now than ever. I've certainly seen it in the context of things like TechSpark and the local kind of tech ecosystem, co-working spaces, etc., coming together to help each other. If I'm doing anything at the moment, sales, marketing led, I'd be aligning myself with that sort of stuff to see how can I help my community, how can I help my industry, whether that's my peers or whether that's my clients, whatever it might be, to get through this together. And that's that's very top level, and it manifests itself in lots of different ways. I know somebody who runs an event and talking about how they could carry on. And I said, well, if you do an event, you're trying to attract a certain type of person, why don't you try and find some people who are doing interesting, cool stuff, given Corona, some interesting kind of campaigns happening, and bring them in to include in your event, and that's what they've done, and it looks like it's doing really well. So that's a specific example of how they're still doing marketing. It's still potentially part of their sales process to engage with new people, but they're doing it through the lens of showcasing a really interesting, cool thing that's happening, that's doing good and supporting the NHS and various charities. So, there's no reason you can't do one without the other, right? And that would be good practice at the best of times. But now it's just laser focused, I think. And so helping is the new selling. And whatever makes sense in the context of your business, I would lead with that.
Yeah, it really is the case that everything that that you should be doing as a business leader or a salesperson or a marketer ultimately is exactly what you should have been doing all the time anyway. It's just reduced your margin for error and made it more important that you get this stuff right and that you do it in volume. I think a lot of senior business leaders are still really just paralyzed by fear. We're a month into lockdown now, and they just have no idea what to do to save jobs, to save the business, to keep revenue afloat, and really are rabbit in headlights, kind of paralyzed at the moment. But in that B2B space, like you say, it is so important to just go and have open conversations with clients and do that more and more and more, and keep adding value wherever you can, figuring out, just speaking to them, picking up the phone, having a completely personal, open conversation about your situation, about their situation, which is all stuff that you should do on a regular basis anyway. But it is super important where like the reality is that selling and winning new business in the next few months is going to be really tough. And so retaining those clients that you have and over communicating with them is massively important. And again, this is all stuff that should be happening anyway, but it is just really exacerbated. In terms of helping other businesses and opportunities that businesses have now to help the community and help others, how can people go about doing that? What have you seen that's been interesting from that side of things?
Well, I think part of this is back to one of the points I was making before about strategic partnerships and events being, really important in a sales or business development strategy or a plan. If before coronavirus you had a clearly identified group of businesses, partners that you were collaborating with, the obvious thing is to go and see what they're doing and how they're doing, and et cetera. And through those conversations, you may be able to identify opportunities to collaborate on something. So, we're doing this podcast. I've been on various other, this is just talking about personal experience of the last few weeks. I've been on various webinars and helped collaborate on things where it was, this is all related to coronavirus. I've been asked, some of the questions I've been asked today, kind of in various situations over the last few weeks, whether that's, through TechSpark or whether collaboration with a few other businesses to arrange our own webinar. People I already knew, people I know in the local ecosystem, they're looking to help and support their communities given my expertise within business development and sales. Obviously, there's people doing a similar thing. I'm sure every aspect of business, whether it's, HR, legal, finance, et cetera, there'll be similar, as I said before, there's endless webinars every day. So if I was, starting from scratch now, I guess if I had been one of those people who you might consider been, rabbit in the headlights or head in the sand or whatever euphemism you want to use over the last few weeks. So I'm now thinking, okay, right, I do want to think about doing some business development or sales or marketing again. One of the easiest ways to do that, along the lines of what we just said with, helping being the new selling, is to look what's going on in your industry. Are there membership organizations? Are there industry bodies? Are there conferences or meetups that would usually be happening that obviously aren't physically but maybe happening digitally? Get involved. And speaking before, are there speaking opportunities? At very least, attend, be present on the webinars. Often they have sort of networking still involved. I've been on various platforms where you kind of get, randomly introduced to other people as part of the call. So there's still opportunities to start conversations and meet people. And as I said, if you can be there as an expert and offer help and support somehow, I'd be 100% trying to get involved in those sorts of conversations. It's ironic, really, given the fact that real life events have all been cancelled, but I haven't been on so many. And networking is a big part of what I do. I'm out a couple of nights a week, if not more, networking in normal times. I'm probably doing the same, if not more now, but digitally. Sat in this room in my loft upstairs on my computer, meeting people from all over the country, all over the world, indeed. So there's definitely opportunities, and I'd say that's good. Identify the market. If you've got a clear market that you work in, a clear client type, clear industry. Every industry will have events, meetups, virtual things going on that you can attend. And actually, you might, again, what I've seen, a lot of these, what would usually be kind of like behind closed doors or behind, paywalls, membership organizations where you need to sign up to be a member to get access, or whatever it might be, we usually be a high ticket item event to go to. They're all, because they've reacted along the lines of they're looking to help, they're looking to, support the community. They're dropping their rates, or some are giving membership away free. What used to be events that were behind closed doors are now open to the public effectively. So actually, it's an even better opportunity to network and have conversations with new people through other organizations that I guarantee will be all, it doesn't matter how niche your industry is, guarantee there'll be a meetup or a conference or something happening in your space, probably daily, if not weekly, if not monthly, globally, that you can go and join and be part of. And that is good practice again at the best of times, but now you can do that from the comfort of your own kit, go to London, fly to Cologne, whatever it is. You can do it from your own bedroom on your laptop and still meet people and learn and whatever it might be. So that's the specific advice I give around that would be sniffing out opportunities to do that sort of stuff. And I don't care how niche your business is, you guarantee there'll be something along those lines to get involved in.
How are you sniffing out those events and those opportunities?
Well, the same way I would do if I was, think about the advice I gave before about building out that kind of partner strategy, doing that kind of mind map, client in the middle, and you're thinking about all the different businesses and industry, other kind of professional service providers, platforms, etc. One of the types of businesses I'll be looking at, or a couple of different types, would be membership organizations, which could be, so if you're targeting, make it specific. If you're targeting marketeers at SaaS companies, those marketeers may be members of, as individuals, may be members of certain professional membership organizations for marketeers. I can't remember, some CIM or whatever, IPA or whatever, some of these different marketing related membership organizations. They as individuals may be members of those organizations. So you may want to also become a member, or look at how you can align yourself with them, or have they got any events? There may be open events you can attend where your clients will be there because they're members. So that would be part of that strategy anyway, but you can do that now. At a business level, so if they work for a SaaS company and their SaaS company is within fintech, for example, what financial services industry bodies are there? Membership organisations, not-for-profit. So Fintech West is a great one in the southwest of the UK, part of the Fintech Alliance, which is a nationwide thing which supports the fintech industry. So if you're within fintech and all the different elements of fintech, whether you're an actual fintech platform or a supplier or consultant, or fintech events are not real world events anymore, but guarantee they'll be doing things digitally. There'll be some way of getting involved in those communities to still, meet people and network, etc. As I said, don't care how niche your sector is, these things will still exist. So I'd be thinking about your client, all about the client, right? Where's your client? What's your industry? Who do you work with? Think about that mind map of all the other different types of businesses and organizations that also, I talk about the metaphor of who's fishing in the same pond. So the pond being the industry or the market you operate within. Who else has got a line into that pond? What other service providers and businesses are in that fishing in that pond? How can you align yourself with those other? I'm not a fisherman, by the way, but I do like the analogy. Who else is fishing in that pond? Buddhists don't fish. So who else is fishing in that pond, and then you can basically align yourself with them somehow. Whether that's just, and again in the context of what we were just talking about, one of those other businesses is that HR provider, that recruitment company that you've identified that also works with the type of business you want to work with, because they're a specialist recruiter for that industry. So guarantee they're having those conversations with the similar people that you want to talk to. Are they hosting an event? Do they sponsor a meetup that you could potentially go to? Because if they're sponsoring that meetup, the guarantee one of the main reasons they're doing it is because they expect some of their clients to attend that meetup so they can have a conversation with them. Well, lo and behold, you can also go to that meetup and be having conversations with the same clients they want to talk to. It's very, very logical when you think about it in that way. And if you do that mind map, think about all those different businesses and then identify specific businesses within all those different areas. Do a bit of research, look online, look at their websites, go on meetup.com, go on Eventbrite, etc., etc. There will be events. Guarantee it. As I said, don't care how niche you are, there will be events that you can go and, that's the specific thing we're talking about now, is identifying events. They will exist. That goes back to that boring bit. It's the boring bit. It's the desk. Give me a list of all the events in my industry. That button doesn't exist, unfortunately, but it takes a bit of legwork. But once you've got that list, the legwork is done. Like any plan, initially the research bit is the difficult bit. You build out a nice list of all the events and the partners you have, and then your job is maybe on a monthly basis going back through that list. Any new events being mentioned that I can attend to, it becomes part of your plan each month to keep ahead of the game. What events are happening? What are my partners saying? Don't want to go for that. The initial thing would just be building that list. What's going on in the next couple of weeks? Sign up to a few webinars and meetups and virtual events and stuff, and get involved. It's most simple.
Awesome. It's not actually something I've taken massive advantage of so far, but for us, that would be massively useful as well. Have you had a chance to get involved in any projects helping out the community in the last few weeks, or have you just been keeping your head above water and just been trying to stay afloat?
Little bit of both, I guess. My immediate reaction to the current situation, I think I look at the date on LinkedIn, so the stats will prove. I can't remember exactly when it was, but I think it was that Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday of that first week when we were all told to stay at home. Was to go onto LinkedIn and post that I was available to talk to business owners and BD and salespeople, to be an agony aunt, if you like, if nothing else, to talk about business development and help provide support and advice as best as I can. You know, no more. And I was inundated with requests. I spent the last 3 weeks pretty much on the back of that one post, having back-to-back conversations with people who reacted, and some of those people I've never met before. You know, obviously the power of social media, right? But that's one thing I did, and none of that's paid work. I've done all that pro bono. God knows how many hours I've racked up giving away free advice to people, but you know, absolutely more than happy to do it, because I recognise it's really, really important at the moment that people have that you know, that opportunity to have that sounding board. And I'd hope that other professional you know, providers in other spaces are doing similar things, right? There'll be HR experts and legal experts and etc. doing the same stuff, and I have seen it, so that's definitely happening. So that's one thing I did, kind of off my back, if you like. I think you know that I do mentoring is via the Natwest Accelerator. It's obviously how we met. So I've had conversations with some of my mentees there, if you like, which you know, so continuing to help that community, which is great, and I love doing that. Again, it's all pro bono stuff, so I don't expect anything in return. It's not why I do it. It's you know, I really enjoy the process. Hopefully, the mentees would get something from it. That's the general idea, but I get loads back myself as well. So it's partly selfish, if nothing else. I have a mentee at University of Bristol, so I've continued to support him through it all. He's had to move from Mexico back to live with his parents in Northern Ireland again, so it's been a bit of a challenge for him, but he's continuing to run his business and do okay given the current circumstances. I've also mentor as part of Babasa, which is an amazing organisation in Bristol who support predominantly young people from BAME backgrounds who want to get into professional careers, all different shapes and sizes. The creative industries and marketing index is really high with their young people as an industry they want to get into. So I help and support as many people there as I can. There's an event they're doing on Monday and Tuesday next week, which I think it's called skillambassador.com. You'll find the event, a bunch of young people, and amazing, really inspirationally, mostly a bunch of young people helping each other out. You know, this isn't about, you know, old fogies like me handing out advice. It's about young people helping each other, showing how they've managed to build careers doing certain things or whatever. And, you know, so and again, they continue to do a great job. And, you know, the fact they're doing it all remotely and without, you know, with limited funding as a not-for-profit it makes it even more admirable. That's probably it, really. Apart from that, you know, probably like a lot of people, I've had a WhatsApp group set up locally. I didn't do it myself. A local doctor set it up straight after lockdown. So we've been helping each other out, doing each other's shopping. We've got a little kind of fruit and veg side WhatsApp group. So people are sharing. We've got a pumpkin plant put on our front wall this morning by one of our neighbours, sharing seedlings and growing tips. And, you know, I've been given my background in horticulture, trying to give a bit of advice where I can about how to look after trees. So yeah, it's been a mixed bag, but yeah, it's I'm trying to I try to do as much kind of good as I can in the world generally, and I certainly haven't stopped over the last few weeks. If anything, obviously, is even more important now that we help where we can. So. You know, that there's a few. I mean, there's maybe some other things. They're the few things that came to mind. But yeah, I've certainly kept myself busy.
Yeah. How have you managed keeping up with so many calls? Like, it's been a challenge helping that many other business people, and also just looking after yourself and your own business at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge, and it's an ever evolving situation. I'm sure if my wife Carolyn was stood next to me now, she'd have a wry smile on her face. You know, my wife is a yoga teacher. We have a 6-year-old son, Curtis. So luckily, I guess it's a double-edged sword, but most of my wife's yoga work was in school. So she teaches yoga to children in schools, to primary school children. So obviously, as soon as the schools closed, that was her work dried up. But as a result, she's been able to step in and kind of do the homeschooling with Curtis. But she still needs to run her business. She still needs to, she still wants to produce video content of her doing yoga lessons for kids, which, lots of kids at home, still a need for them to engage and do the yoga they usually do at school. Again, if not more important now than ever. So we've been trying to work out a routine which evolves every week of me working at certain times and looking after Curtis at other times, so she can go into one of the rooms in the house and record a yoga video, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's been a evolving situation where got diary blocked out, and I can have meetings at certain times and not other times, and et cetera, et cetera. But having some sort of routine seems to be what works. So I live by my diary at the best of times. I've got a terrible memory. If it's not written down in my diary, if it's not in my paper diary, that is, if it's not in my digital diary, or it's not in my CRM, HubSpot, as far as my brain's concerned, it's like it didn't happen. So I rely on my digital brain to look after myself. I have a very strict calendar process, stuff booked in, all that. So I've managed to keep myself on track by just continuing that routine as best I can. As a very kind of outward, gregarious, sociable person, I definitely miss meeting people face to face. Of course I do, but having the opportunities to do video calls and stay connected with people is kind of softened the blow, if you like. I don't feel like I'm isolated in the extreme sense of the word. If anything, I feel actually more connected to a lot of people because I'm doing this all the time. But yeah, there's some sort of daily routine where I have time booked out for work, time booked out for home, family, relaxing, whatever it might be. That's how I cope with it. Everyone's different, but that's just how my mind works. If nothing else, that if I have that time booked out, I know when I need to focus. I know when I'm going to be doing work, and then the other time gets filled up very quickly with other stuff. I don't have to worry about filling the downtime up. That's just when you've got a 6-year-old son, it kind of looks after itself.
Awesome. Jack, thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your expertise, sharing your time, and I know that you're very generous with it normally anyway, but it doesn't make it any less appreciated. So thank you very much for joining us.
My absolute pleasure. Look, this is I don't try and mention it all the time because it's kind of it's important, but it's also not important. But I was raised as a Buddhist. My dad predominantly is a Buddhist, so that's I wouldn't necessarily call myself a Buddhist in the strictest sense of the term, although I do look a bit like a monk at the moment. But I do believe in, and obviously a lot of the stuff that I was taught growing up has come into my business life, and I think but business karma, if you like, for want of a better expression, is I'm a big believer in. And you pay it forward, you do good in the world, you help other people, and without that being you're not doing it for selfish reasons. You do it genuinely as a selfless act to help other people, whether that's in business or in personal life. It does come around in some way, shape or form. The world has a funny way of kind of like, paying you back for that good stuff. And I found that throughout my life. I don't know whether that's, you can't, it's not a kind of scientific experiment that you can repeat and rely upon. And I'm sure there's lots of people out there that do lots of amazing good work. You feel that they're only getting back in return. It's not an exact science, right? But for me personally, doing good stuff, supporting other people, helping other people, being selfless to a certain degree, has actually ended up paying benefits in other ways, and not just financially and monetary wise, but in sort of spiritually, as well as by just connections and friendships and etc. as well. So I do it from a genuinely selfless place, because otherwise it would be weird and kind of I don't know, it wouldn't come across as genuine. But the reality, it actually does happen to have some really great benefits as well. So it does encourage me to do more of it, if nothing else.
If people want to get in contact with you off the back of this, where are the best places for them to get in contact and find you?
Well, I'm sat in my loft all day, every day, so they can come and knock on my door. Sadly, that's not a thing anymore. I'm in LinkedIn's the best place to find me. I do have a Twitter profile, but it's kind of it's not it's a bit of a mix of stuff. So LinkedIn's the best find. So Jack Thompson, Ginkgo Business Development is my company. Ginkgo is Ginkgo, Ginkgo. So Ginkgo. It's a type of Japanese tree that I used to grow once upon a time, hence the name. So yeah, Ginkgo Business Development or Jack Thompson on LinkedIn, you should find me. And yeah, it's probably the best way to get in touch with me.
Cool. I'll stick some links to Babasa in the show notes as well. I know them from a distance. I know they do some good work, so I'll include the notes to that as well.
Great. Awesome.
And if you've got links to anything else that you want to send over to me afterwards that we've chatted about, then ping them over. Cheers, Jack.
No problem. Absolute pleasure. Thank you.